Chapter 26, The Great Depression from 1929 to 1939 by Paulo Anell and Bryan, Alvarez. The Great Depression in the United States. In 1929, Herbert Hoover becomes president in the United States. The Depression began with the strike of economic disaster. The U.S. stock market crashes on October 24, 1929. Investors referred October 29 as a Black Tuesday, reason being because on that day in 1929, share prices on the New York Stock Exchange collapsed. The total loss for that month was $16 billion. The economy's failure, 1930 to 1932. In 1930, Herbert Hoover signs the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. This raised taxes on 900 imports. Drought hits 23 states, crops began to fail, and farmers were not able to feed themselves. This was also known as the Dust Bowl drought. December 11, the fourth largest, biggest bank called Bank of the United States failed. This caused the economy to shrink by 8.5%, and unemployment rate rose to 8.7%. In 1931, the economy and unemployment rate worsened. Food riots began to break out and people began to suffer. In 1932, 10,000 banks failed. 13 million Americans lost their jobs since 1929. International trade falls by 2/3. Top tax rate is raised from 25 to 63%. FDR takes action, 1933 to 1934. In 1933, Franklin Roosevelt becomes president. Another bank failure occurs and Roosevelt closes financial institutions to stop a run on banks. This was also known as the bank holiday. Roosevelt ended the Beer and Wine Revenue Act and raised taxes on alcohol to raise revenue. In May, the Federal Relief Act created more federal jobs. The Emergency Farm Mortgage Act provided loans to save farms from foreclosure. The Securities Act required companies to educate investors when issuing stocks. The National Industrial Recovery Act created the Public Works Administration, which added more jobs. The National Industrial Recovery Act also outlawed child labor and created minimum wage. In 1934, on April 15, known as the Black Sunday, was the worst dust storm ever. FDR passed a Soil Conservation Act to teach farmers sustainable methods. As a result, to all new law-breakings, the economy grew by 10.8%, unemployment dropped to 21.7%, prices rose 1.5%, and debt rose to $27 billion. Saving the people, 1935 through 1937. In 1935, FDR launched more programs focused in the poor, the unemployed, and farmers. The Social Security Act provided income to elderly, the blind, the disabled, and children in low-income families. In 1936, in June, the hottest summer was recorded at 120 degrees. Heat waves killed 1,693 people. Another 3,500 people died drowning trying to cool off. In 1937, FDR cut spending to reduce debt. The cutback in New Deal spending pushed the economy into depression. Congress later put $5 million for relief program. The economy grew 5%, unemployment dropped to 14.3%, and prices rose to 2.9%. The good old days are back. 1938 to 1939. 1938. FDR asked Congress to authorize $3.75 billion in federal spendings to improve the economy. The economy started to grow. There was still high unemployment rates, and it was predicted to remain on that average for a long time. 1939. Great Depression ends. As the U.S. emerges from the Depression, it borrows $1 billion to build armed forces.
Japan expansionism. The Great Depression struck Japan's economy. During this time, Japan was recovering from a catastrophic earthquake. Mobilization of the masses in Japan. Army leaders used mass media to increase people's patriotism. Labor unions supported militarization and urged workers to give their own money to support the development of military. 1937, Japan's government spent 47% of its budget on weaponry. Japan's New Life movement was introduced by Jiang Qi in 1934. Germany, Hitler's rise to power. During the Great Depression, Nazi popularity grew, such as white-collar workers and lower middle class. Modern propaganda techniques. In 1933, Hitler becomes chancellor. He suspended civil rights and prohibited meetings of other political parties. He also stimulated the economy by investing in public works, regulated gender roles, censored radio and newspapers. The Enabling Act of 1933 suspended Constitution for 4 years. Nazi racism blamed Germany's defeat in World War I and the economic crisis. Protesting poverty, social unrest. The Great Depression produced rising protests, which was led by activists trained in the Soviet Union, communist parties in Chinese countryside, Indochina, the United States, Latin America, and across Europe. Unemployed organized and protested. Communist parties grew popular. People protested, organized, and conducted strikes overturning imperial order. Governments and business owners responded with force on the protesters. Troops and other security forces attacked the protesters. Social effects of the Great Depression. Worldwide modernization. Building new roads, electricity, modernized sanitation, running water, investing profitable development projects in different countries. The fortunate. Upper class and landowners evicted tenants and workers who were unable to pay their rents. Weapon manufacturers, merchants and domestic trade, moneylenders and large owners. Gender relations. Reversal of gender's expectations fueled disconnect. And men searched for better jobs or stayed home doing housekeeping chores. Women had low-paying jobs such as doing laundry, mirroring, and other domestic service. Dorothea Lange, America's greatest documentary photographer. She is known for her photographs of the Great Depression. One included the Dust Bowl drought. The Dust Bowl drought was a period of severe dust storms that damaged agriculture in the 1930s. This drought caused failure towards farming methods